My name is Hudson. I'm 34 years old, and for work, I help out my in-laws' business. I live together with my wife, Hazel, my daughter Lily, who is in second grade, and my mother-in-law. My father-in-law passed away from illness some years ago. We were worried about Hazel's mother living on her own, so we moved in with her. We live near my parents' house, so that's also convenient. But there are two things weighing on my mind. The first is that my wife is cheating on me. My wife is the type who can't refuse other men when they approach her, and she has done shocking things. I've noticed that since we first started dating. But when I proposed, she swore she'd change and that I'd be the only man in her life. Choosing that kind of woman to be my wife was a mistake, but I believed her. Nevertheless, when we married, nothing changed. She would secretly message people often. We were once on the brink of divorce, but she seemed to reflect on her actions. Also, I still had feelings for her, and we were worried about our daughter, so we decided not to do it. Even after that, she never lets go of her phone. I'm astonished every time I see her talking to people in secret. Deep down, I know she's probably cheating on me again. My second issue is my mother-in-law. Since we began living together, she has been interfering in my life more and more, and she often verbally harasses me. At first, I thought she just did it because she's sad and lonely, but as days and months passed, she only escalated. I never realized she was such a rude person. By the time I realized, it was too late. She's even ruined job opportunities I was preparing myself for, and she's so stingy. Even about things she plans on throwing away. She just does anything she pleases. Even if I complain, Hazel just laughs at me, so I can't say anything. My mother-in-law also butts in every time I argue with my wife, because Hazel turns to her mom for help anytime her and I begin to fight. Of course, they're always on each other's side. Even when we argued about Hazel having an affair, my mother-in-law said it's my fault, that Hazel only did that because I'm always angry at her. When she said that, my jaw dropped from shock. Every time she attacks me, she blames me for not giving her a grandson, and says other old-fashioned things. Well, that's unrelated. I bite my tongue and just hold everything in. My in-laws run a small real estate company. It's nothing impressive. My wife, who has affairs and is always using her mom against me, and my mother-in-law, who loves to harass me. Every day my relationship with them brings me down. My daughter's smile is my only source of hope. I've thought about getting a divorce many times, but at the moment I'm even working for my in-laws' real estate company, so I'm worried about my finances. Thinking about my daughter and her future, I wanted to make sure she could live a good life. Lily also really loves her mom, so I didn't want to take her mother away from her. Considering all of that, I couldn't bring myself to actually get a divorce. Today, my daughter gave me a drawing she made of me at school. I really do love her. Her drawings have really improved these days. Looking at the drawing, I felt how much she's grown and couldn't help but smile. Lily is by my side, so I can push through this. I thanked her and stroked her head. She looked up at me happily. One day, my daughter went off to school as usual. Hazel finished up her chores at home and said she was going out grocery shopping. My mother-in-law said she wanted to talk to me about work matters. As usual, we spoke about our current tenants. By now, I had built up tolerance for the impossible task she would give me. I would keep my replies short, and she would blame me for having to keep worrying about the company at her age. She called me a cold man and raised her voice. I sighed. Looking out the window, I saw it was dark and cloudy outside. It seemed it would rain. My mother-in-law called me over to her again. It was like I was her maid. She would ask me for countless little favors, changing the light bulb, taking out the trash. She was probably going to ask me for something similar again. I could already picture it. I was in the middle of doing the laundry and wondering where my wife wears the fancy clothes I was folding. I had some spare time, so here and there I would do web designer freelance gigs. But that day, my mother-in-law was in a strangely good mood. "Oh, you have guests today?" I saw leather shoes resting near the front door as I walked over to her.
"Ah, there's someone I want you to meet."
Feeling more and more uneasy with every step, I entered the living room. There I saw my wife, who was supposed to be out grocery shopping, and a man I didn't know. The man was very put together.
"Sit down,"
my mother-in-law urged me to sit. "Didn't you go out grocery shopping?" I ignored the man and asked my wife directly. My wife looked at the floor with a guilty look on her face.
"I have something I need to talk to you about today, so I asked my mom for help."
"Is it about this man?" I turned to look at him, and he remained straight-faced. My mother-in-law began peeling a mandarin orange. She ate it, calmly. My wife, on the other hand, was pale and trembling.
"I'm pregnant," I'm already at my 5th month. I want to give birth to this child, so let's please divorce.
My wife was always a bit chubby, so I hadn't noticed. I was shocked. Looking more closely at her stomach, I saw she wasn't lying. It seemed she couldn't bring herself to tell me this until now, and in the meantime, her stomach slowly grew larger. Hazel fell to the ground on her knees. I let out a big sigh. Why was she on her hands and knees like that? She was doing this to get me to agree to the divorce, not actually to apologize. I understood that very well. I couldn't hold back my sadness. Have you forgotten about Lily? How could you have an affair like this? How could you do this when we have Lily? The last time she cheated on me, her response was, "If I do this again, please take care of Lily for me." That's all she said. Though she usually doted on her daughter, in times like this she was different. Just thinking that Hazel will hurt her daughter through this, I cried. No matter what I tried, I couldn't hold back my emotions. "I'm serious about Hazel." Hazel's lover interrupted us in a calm voice. He looked over at me quietly. "Hazel told me that she prioritizes me above you and Lily, so her and I are having our son, just as her mother always wanted." He said this with a smile. He nodded his head and put his hand on Hazel's stomach. I was angry and disgusted at his actions. To think he could say something like that in this situation. My mother-in-law finally spoke.
Well, unlike you, my daughter can still give birth. My daughter is so calm and kind-hearted. I am in full support of you two getting divorced.
Your daughter is so kind-hearted? If she was, she wouldn't have had an affair and gotten pregnant. The pain in my voice was obvious. My mother-in-law stared at me.
Annoying, aren't you? This is decided. The only kids you can make are girls, so divorce Hazel and get out of this house.
My mother-in-law yelled as she flicked her hand to shoo me away. Hazel wouldn't make eye contact with me. Her lover smiled at me as if he was proud of his victory. I'm fine with getting a divorce, but I will raise Lily. I ran out of the house without an umbrella, but that didn't matter to me at this point. I went to my parents' house with a hollow smile on my face. I told them what had happened and moved in with them. "Do you want to live with your new dad?" I asked Lily as I moved out.
"No, I want to be with you,"
she said, and she decided to come with me. I called Hazel about this, and she brought Lily to my parents' house. Hazel seemed reluctant to part with Lily, but she understood what she had done. Ultimately, she also accepted my demands. I claimed alimony from her and her lover. They also agreed to pay child support for Lily. I was drained both mentally and physically, but my father introduced me to a good lawyer, so everything proceeded without much delay. I was most worried about my daughter's feelings, but even after the divorce, Lily continued to smile just as brightly as before. Maybe I was more worried than I had to be. We began living with my parents. Luckily, my daughter adores them. 3 months later, I was able to find a new job. I ended up working as a web design consultant. While I'm at work, my mom takes care of Lily. Deep down, Lily must still love and miss her mom. There's nothing more sad than seeing a child suffer because of its parents. I want to make sure my daughter is as happy as possible. I thought she wouldn't want to move and change schools, so I made sure that my new job is in her school district. It was around that time that I received a phone call from Hazel's mother. She still had my phone number. I thought I would just ignore the phone, but I ended up picking up. The first thing she said as soon as I picked up,
"The new baby's eyes are..."
She spoke in a flustered voice. I was taken aback by how sudden this was. "We promised to only call each other if it's strictly necessary." I spoke to her in a cold voice.
"My daughter-in-law tricked me."
I shouldn't have picked up the phone call, but I was interested to hear what she might say. I decided to listen to her before I said anything.
"The baby's eyes are blue, and he has blonde hair."
As expected, Hazel had given birth to a healthy child the day before. The baby looked nothing like Hazel of her lover, but he was a boy. Hazel's mother told me that after Hazel and I divorced, Hazel registered her marriage with her lover. I did all I could to keep myself from laughing. Apart from me, Hazel had slept with many men, and the real father of her son was not the man she remarried. Hazel's mother was angry. She obviously felt like she was the victim in all this. It seems Hazel chose to remarry the man I had met that day because he was the most rich out of all her lovers. "My daughter is too horrible," she said, her voice full of emotion. Hazel and her mother probably never imagined this happening, but they're the ones who did this to themselves. "This has nothing to do with me," I said to my ex-mother-in-law. She seemed surprised by my response. I gave a wry smile. Did she think I would comfort her? "What's wrong with blue eyes? It's the grandson you always wanted," I told her. I could hear how what I said made Hazel's mother tremble on the other side of the phone.
The man Hazel remarried was so angry you left her, so I want you to get back together with her.
Hearing her tell me to remarry her daughter, I exploded. You would always make a fool out of me. Live with your daughter and your cute, blonde, blue-eyed grandson and leave me alone, I said. My mother-in-law spoke hurriedly.
The man she remarried requested a huge alimony from her and divorced her. We'll have to sell the real estate agency. I don't know how we'll survive from now on, she said.
That has nothing to do with me, I said and hung up the phone. I was glad I found all this out, but at the same time, I couldn't believe they wanted me to get back together with Hazel. I was frustrated. That night, I sat down for dinner with my mom and daughter. My dad was at work still and hadn't come home yet.
When Grandpa comes home, I want us to watch TV together,
Lily said. My mother smiled and happily said she'd join us. At that moment, our doorbell rang. We wondered who it could be at this hour and walked towards the door. I looked through the peephole and saw it was Hazel and her mother. Lily, go to your grandma. I left Lily with my mom, and keeping the chain lock in, I opened the door. The door was suddenly pushed sharply, and the chain made a sharp metallic sound. Good I had left the chain lock in. I heard someone making disappointed noises outside. My mother-in-law showed her face in the door's opening. Hazel stood behind her, holding her baby, with a shamed look on her face.
Won't you get back together with Hazel? Don't you know how kind she is?
That's none of your concern. Focus on your blonde, blue-eyed grandson and your sweet daughter. Don't come back here again. If you do, I will call the police, I said, and Hazel's mother's face went red.
I know what she did was wrong. She deceived me too. This time, the four of us should live happily together.
I tried to close the door, but Hazel's mother kept pushing it open. The door's chain rattled, and she continued to yell. I wondered what I could do to put an end to this crazy situation. Then someone else appeared, who finally made Hazel's mother go quiet.
All you do is bully Dad. I hate you.
I turned around and saw Lily standing behind me, eyes full of tears. My mom came from behind, looking flustered. She held Lily back and was holding her cell phone in her hand.
Your dad is on his way with a lawyer, said my mom.
It seemed she had gotten in touch with my dad and the lawyer who helped us out with the divorce. Hearing my mom, I was relieved. Until that moment, it had seemed like Hazel and her mom would break the door's chain, but suddenly they seemed afraid.
Lily, wait with your grandma over there.
Lily shook her head.
I hate people who bully Dad.
She said this and began to cry even more. Without thinking, I hugged my daughter. Hazel and her mother looked at us, stunned. It seemed they had lost all strength. Even their faces looked lifeless. Lily's words really worked. Shortly after, my dad arrived with a lawyer. A police call pulled up as well. It seems that our neighbor had called the police. Hazel, there is no way you are getting back together with my son. If you regret what you've done, you should deal with it yourself. Following what my father said, I stood in front of Hazel and her mother. Don't hurt Lily more than you already have. There's no way I will do anything you say. Don't talk to me ever again. Hearing what my dad and I had to say, Hazel and her mother twisted their faces grimly and nodded. They went and sat in the police car. The lawyer said he will do everything in his power to punish them so that this never happens again. I shook his hand and thanked him. Later, Hazel chased after the real father of her son, but it seems he had a wife. His wife ended up suing Hazel for alimony as well. At this point, Hazel and her mother were miserable and completely out of money. I hope that somehow her baby will be happy one day. Rumors about Hazel and her mother spread throughout the neighborhood, and they ended up having to move. The two of them moved together in a small, sad apartment. In order to pay child support for Lily, as well as all the money she owes in alimony, Hazel works all day and all night. As of now, she's keeping up with child support payments, but we'll see for how long that lasts. On the other hand, things are going well with my job. I'm happily living together with my parents and daughter, and I'm looking forward to seeing the lovely young lady my daughter becomes.